When did Open Data Saves Lives start?
Open Data Saves Lives started at the end of March, April last year, 2020. Paul and I came back from a skiing holiday, managed to get COVID, and we're talking about lost sense of taste and smell and things on WhatsApp, like a month before it was even on the BBC. And that was like quite an important thing, that we realised that you can actually share a ton of data for good amongst yourselves if people are very relaxed about sharing data through technology. So around the end of March 2020.
What is Open Data Saves Lives all about? So
kind of on the back of that skiing trip and catching COVID, and Paul and I kind of getting back together a year or so ago and thinking, what about if you linked, if you linked kind of good data on health with open source techniques, open data, open innovation. Health is ripe for kind of getting more data out there in the open, and COVID just kind of proved that more than ever. So Paul Connell, who runs the Open Data Institute in Leeds, and me, who helped set up Beautiful Information a few years ago, we kind of got together and thought, I know a bit about health, you know a ton about open source, open data and technology. What about if we kind of pointed this approach at health? And I presented something over almost 2 years ago now called Data Saves Lives. And we thought, what about if you just put everything out there in the open and just try and get past silly discussions about IP and just get everyone sharing all of their knowledge in an open way? And COVID just became the kind of catalyst for that.
Who was involved in Open Data Saves Lives?
Okay, so we've got the Open Data Institute in Leeds, we've got Beautiful Information, and we kind of set it up and started running these weekly seminars, which really started to take off. And just before the last one, we had a really nice statistic where we'd run about 20 sessions, about 20 sessions, we've had about 100 speakers, and we've had about 1,000 participants. But what's been great is that all sorts of other people have kind of got involved, like the Health Foundation, people like NHS Digital, NHSX, some of the big commissioning support units. We've had journalists, we've had people from Oxford University, people from the Centre for Public Data, people from the Open Data Institute itself, a load of people from newspapers. Lots of kind of different people from different backgrounds have kind of got involved and said, I've kind of interested in an element of COVID. That might have been how to draw a map about it. It might have been how to forecast the data. It might have been how to count it properly. It might have been about how to create really good information governance protocols so that people can link data sets together. But a whole load of different people. And it's all documented on our website, which is opendatasaveslives.org.
What kind of stuff do you do?
So whatever project that we kind of tackle, and that might be some of the ones I'm going to list, like we've looked at domestic abuse during lockdown. We're kind of interested in how the NHS has completely shifted its model of care. So we're doing some work now on remote consultations. What we try and do each time that we talk about something is we do three things. So we write a kind of a story blog, which is literally a blog that explains kind of what we were trying to sort out, who was involved, what we were trying to do. The second thing we do is we put a technical blog together, which says, this is the code that I use, this is how I kind of got my data together, these are any algorithms that I developed, this is how I got it to work, this is how I got it to draw a map on the screen, and so on. And the third bit is just a sort of a repo where you actually publish all of the code in such a way that if someone came along with a similar data set, they could kind of pour it into your sausage machine and just reproduce the analysis. So story blog, technical blog, and a way of reproducing the analysis. That's what we do each time.
What are the big projects?
We've looked at a whole load of projects. I suppose I mentioned a couple of the big ones that I've been closely involved in and that I've found quite powerful. So one close to my heart has been domestic abuse. So during lockdown, there's been a horrible, unfortunate risk that more women are getting hit by men. And simply, the police have got a file of men who hit women, and I've got a file in the NHS of women that have come into hospital being hit by men. If you link those two data sets together and you do it really securely and safely, and you get all the right approvals in place, what we found is that you can actually identify many more families at risk. So with the police file, that gets you about 47% of the families at risk. If you add in the data from the NHS, we think that 47% goes up to about 81%. So it's a very powerful case study, and it's a very sensitive area in terms of how you use the data, but we felt quite strongly that we wanted to kind of do it and make a contribution in that area. So that's a really big one. Another good example has been one of the areas that people were arguing about kind of quite early on in COVID was about kind of sharing data. So Andy Byrne, some of the big directors of public health were kind of saying, you need to tell us the data about who's been tested and who hasn't and what the results are so that we can plan for them locally. And the government was quite slow about releasing all this data together. And at our hospital, one of my colleagues managed to get the data flowing between public health and the NHS on people's test results. So if you had a test result a couple of days ago for COVID and it said you were positive, when you come into the hospital, if the test was only done a day or two ago, we don't need to redo it. And we know you've got COVID, so we can put you in a COVID area, and we don't have to risk putting you with other patients who haven't got COVID yet and risking what's called nosocomial infections, which is people catching COVID in hospital. And that is a very simple thing to describe, but it's actually very difficult to get everybody to agree it's a good thing to do. So what we did with public health was got their permission to link the data together. We've written it up, we've published it on opendataSavesLives.org, and we're now talking to people like NHSIE about extending that project across the whole country, because it's just a really good thing to do. And there's some projects during COVID that you just can't wait months and months for committees to kind of agree to. You just kind of got to get on with them.
What are you going to do in 2021?
Well, in this year, what we're going to try and do is formally launch Open Data Saves Lives as a not-for-profit organisation. We've set up the website, and that's kind of given us the discipline of having to write down what it is that we want to do. And there's 4 big things there, and we've written them as 4 pledges. So the first one is what we're calling Give the Data Back. And that is, in the NHS, what happens every day, it seems, is that you get asked to send some data off to someone else. How many people are going to your hospital today? What's your average length of stay? How long were ambulances waiting? How many of your staff members did you test for COVID, and so on? And that data doesn't always feel like it comes back for you to kind of analyse. So the first pledge we're going to make this year is kind of give the data back. So any data that's been collected, let's have it back so that we can do some analysis. Let's learn from who's doing well and who's doing badly at COVID. The second one is that issue around information governance, and that is under the pledge of Save Lives, not Data. So we want to make a lot of noise about making the case that sharing data can be good. So Paul and I and friends were sharing data on WhatsApp saying, I've lost my sense of smell today. That was sharing data, and it helped us all because it made us realise, oh God, I've got the same as what he's got. The whole point about clinical trials and the way that we've come to a vaccine so quickly is because people have shared data. So we want to make people less worried about sharing data, as long as it's done sensitively and properly, that it can be a good thing. The third one is what we're calling radically open, and this is to try and sort of break down traditional models of knowledge. So making the case that there is not strong IP that exists in a demand and capacity model. Just publish all of your models openly. Don't protect data that doesn't need to be protected. Allow it out there into the world. Let people use it, and just break down some of these quite old-fashioned models where you kind of have to sign up to a platform to get into that walled garden to kind of learn what's going on. Just break all that down. And then the fourth one is under the pledge of sort of share my data. So just encouraging people in an appropriate way to put their data out there so that you can share. So, a group of men in their early 50s might share data that led them more quickly to present earlier for possible cancer symptoms, for example. There's a lot of very vague symptoms around cancers for men. We're trying to encourage people to share their experiences, share their data, help build models, help build algorithms for each other so that we can kind of improve their care.
How can people get involved in Open Data Saves Lives?
It's an open organisation. There's a website. We're on Twitter. You can email us. You can phone us. Just come on down. We'll take people who want to sponsor us. We're almost more interested in people who've just got good ideas. So something that's very topical at the moment, as the vaccine is rolling out very well, we're worried that there seems to be some data suggesting that white people are getting vaccinated much more quickly than non-white people. So in terms of how people can get involved, come to us with good research questions. Vaccine take-up by ethnicity is one very current example. There'll be another one next week, and there'll be another one the week after that. So come with really good ideas, join in, speak at our events, collaborate with us. If you're the corporate sector, you can sponsor the work we're doing. If you're in the government sector, you might put analysts in, you might commission pieces of work, but just come on down and kind of get involved.
Is there any merch?
There is a badge for you. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. What a fantastic story, and we've had a lot of love for the style of the video as well, in what you how you did it. So obviously, Open Data Saves Lives has been a part of our lives at ODI Leeds for the last year, and I can't believe that it's been 12 months and we're nearly a year old. And then some of the stats are amazing. We've now got 25. We've had 25 events. Thousands of people involved, hundreds of people. In the events themselves, and lots of great speakers. But you talked about what happens next and setting up a new non-profit. Why do you think it's so important that we need to do that?
I think the thing I've become interested in through getting to know you and our friends in Holland over the last year, because that's kind of where it started at one of these, when we did Data Saves Lives, is the existing types of organisations we've got just aren't quite right. And I don't think it's out of malice. They're just not quite right for where we are now. So I got asked to appear on an NHSX video last week to sort of do some sound bites all about the new data strategy and so on. And they asked me to try and give them something punchy at the end. And I just said, Open Data Saves Lives. And I think why people need what we've got now is that you and I have talked about the kind of indie record label of having people who are just a bit further ahead, who don't mind having some of those slightly more abrasive and sometimes difficult conversations about why we should link data. So I was chairing a regional meeting this morning, and there's new evidence that's come out that says it's probably over 80% of people don't mind their data being used if it's for the common good. And those were the kind of the words that were used. And I just feel like we're a bit slow on maximising that opportunity. So that's not traditional organisations that are going to fix that. I think you need something a bit smaller and a bit more agile and a bit more open, which I think is how you and I got to hear.
Yeah, we got to hear my constant rant about new institutions, and new institutions for now, not old institutions trying to change the way. So we built it ourselves. So what happens next? So what happens in April and after that?
So I think we stand up a not-for-profit. I think we formalise the programme that we've already been running kind of in our spare time with no funding. And I think out of that, what's quite nice is there's a kind of conveyor belt of quite meaty projects that come out of it. So you need to run the programme and you need to fund and sponsor the programme properly so that it throws out projects which then take a life of their own. And so you and I have done a lot of work on domestic abuse during lockdown over the last year. That is a solid enough project on its own now that we've got it working in Kent, and we now need to just go and try and get it to work in lots more places around the country. So there's a kind of conveyor belt of ideas. So you have to have that central program where we regularly talk about, what is the latest set of new topics that we've got. So I'd like to do one over the next couple of months on how to talk to the public about what you and I and others want to do with their data. I've found some really interesting experts on that recently. So there's a program of work we have to do and fund and support properly. And then out of that, a series of projects. So remote consultations is one we've looked at. We've looked at domestic abuse. You've done some brilliant work on geography. We've done a lot of work which is still relevant on ethnicity and whether BAME is effective or not. And the vaccine minister's got interested in what you and I are doing, which is fantastic. So I think we just have to keep on keeping on, really. Just keep the community going that keeps throwing out ideas that we take and then mould into proper projects that become more than just a conversation.
Yeah, fantastic. And I'm going to leave it there because we're going to get to our tea break. But the next Open Data Saves Lives is on Thursday morning.
Yep.
We're doing it in response to Ben Goldacre's review about data use in the NHS. Some of Ben's team might turn up, they might not, but we're doing an open innovation response to the Goldacre review. So if anyone wants to join in, you can join in with our open Google Doc. Myself and Mark will be on the line there. We're going to spend an hour with a lot of the experts and the contributors to Open Data Saves Lives over the last year, and see if we're going to test ourselves to see if we can write something meaningful in an hour. So there's a little bit of jeopardy there as well if you want to see us in action. So Mark, thanks so much for today. Just let us know where you are today and what you're doing.
I'm at Kent County Cricket Ground organising the second vaccines and for the clinically vulnerable. So 2 afternoons a week, just trying to get people through the queue. I'm just marshalling. I'm not doing anything sophisticated.
Thanks very much, Mark.